This is episode 111 of the Magic Detective Podcast. On this episode, you'll hear about the life of the Marvelous Joseffy. That and more on this episode of the Magic Detective Podcast. Hello and welcome to the Magic Detective Podcast, your podcast home for magic history. I'm your host, Dean Carnegie. I am the Magic Detective, and this is episode 111. Is it possible to be both exhausted and excited at the same time? If so, that would be me right now. I just finished nearly 100 shows for summer, and now I'm gearing up for the fall performances. One thing for fall is the inclusion of a trick I created for Penn and Teller audition. They didn't choose me, but that particular trick that I came up with is going to be in the show this fall. And also, by the way, I'm back to the podcast. And before I get into all that, I'm curious how many people took part in the Kreskin auction by Potter & Potter a couple weeks ago. I did. I finally won something, but I didn't get what I wanted. I did win something, but the main thing I entered the auction for, I didn't get. So let me address that. If you know, or if you are the person who won the 7 suits owned by Kreskin, or the 20 tuxedos owned by Kreskin, I would be interested in purchasing one of them. Either the tux or a suit, just one. So if you're out there and you have one that you'd be willing to let go, I'll buy it from you. Just please email me at info@carnegiemagic.com and let me know if you're willing to sell one of the costumes. I would really appreciate it. There's a lot of buzz already about next year's anniversary of Houdini's death, 100 years. I happen to know a lot of things that are going to take place, both some new books to be released and some events. I will be doing something special with the podcast, but I'll tell you more about that later. And coming out of coming before the anniversary is the John Cox and Mike Caveney collaboration on Houdini's first diary called Escaping Obscurity, the Travel Diary of Harry Houdini, 1897 through 1899. Everyone I've heard from loves the book. I can't imagine you wouldn't. I don't have it yet. I've been on the road, so it's not been feasible for me to order one until I got home, which I just did. So I hope you're enjoying the book. I'm sure it's great, and I will get a copy of one very soon. I think on my last podcast, I mentioned my Fu Manchu painting and that I'd have it for sale soon. I'm working on that. I'm putting together a small catalog of what is available for anyone who's interested, and I'll post it up on my blog and on the Magic Detective group page. It's not ready yet, but I'll have it here in a few days. So, today's feature. Wow. I've been working on this episode off and on for months, and it predates the Velma episode. It predates the David Vanberg episode. And it's just been a very difficult episode because there's a lot less information out there on this fellow. And on top of that, Jim Steinmeier featured an article on our boy and the genie this spring. So it was another reason I delayed it slightly. But now it's time to wrap things up. So let's meet the Marvelous Joseffy. Our featured artist was born Josef Freud on March 3rd, 1872 in Budapest, Hungary. He actually claimed he was from Vienna, Austria, but he was born in the same town as Houdini. Add to that, he may have been related to Sigmund Freud. From an August 1945 issue of The Linking Ring, we learn he saw his first magician in Europe, though he wasn't 100% sure who it was. He believed it might have been Decollete. The article also says that his favorite magicians were Paul Valadon, Felix Hermann, Frederick Eugene Powell, and Keller. Oh, and he was also fascinated by Carl Germain. Joseph moved to America in 1899 and began his foray into magic in 1900. He was a mechanic for Chicago magic dealer H.J. Burlingame for a time. He chose the name Joseffy as his stage name and began performing around 1903 at the Steinway Hall in Chicago. By 1908, Joseffy had created some of the most unique and original effects ever seen. And here starts a bit of controversy. Two of Joseffy's most famous effects were a spirit-rapping hand and a spirit-talking skull. But in a 1908 issue of the Conjurer's Monthly magazine, I found a letter to the editor where someone completely different claimed to be the inventor of both the hand and the skull. That man was Montraville Wood, often referenced in magic periodicals as M.M. Wood. He was born in 1860 in Cattaraugus, New York, and settled in Berwyn, Illinois. He was a prolific inventor of magic pieces, which included the disappearing handkerchief from the side of a gun, the vanishing cards on top of a gun, a coin dropper used by T. Nelson Downs, a second sight system, and much more. And this is what his letter to the editor had to say, quote, I remember in 1888 when I was doing some work for Harry Keller in Erie, Pennsylvania. I thought he was a wonder, and I still think so, and he had no hesitancy in giving me credit for suggestions in his line. In later years, I've brought out some magical works and have trusted to my friends' advice as to their value, but now I find that it does not pay. I wish to call attention in particular to one instance when I invented, made, and operated the special rapping hand in 1900, and sometime later, through my friend Mr. Burlingham, of Chicago, I exhibited this hand to a mechanic by the name of Josef Freud, who, by the way, with my permission, exhibited this hand to Mr. Keller and took an order for one from him. He also used my original model to work from in fulfilling the order. Mr. Burlingham sent me my share of the profits and later sent the original model of the hand back to me in Schenectady, New York. I now hold in my possession the original letters from my friend Mr. Burlingham, which show, number one, that he offers me profit if he sells the hand to Keller. Two, that I sent him my original model from which his mechanic, Josef Freud, made a duplicate. The same mechanical apparatus or cylinder will also cause a skeleton's head to move its jaws, by the way. And number three, the original hand was returned to me after it had been copied by Freud. And four, that I was paid my share of the profits made from the hand, which was furnished to Keller by Burlingham. Not very long ago, however, while giving an evening's performance, I was asked by a professional how I liked Joseffy's hand. I, of course, was surprised and immediately took steps to look up this man, Joseffy, and found that he had gained considerable notoriety by posing as the originator of the hand and also a skull. You can perhaps imagine my surprise when I learned that Joseffy was none other than Josef Freud, Burlingham's mechanic. Unquote. Very truly yours, M.M. Wood. And let me add that Wood also was the secret inventor of Houdini's milk can escape. So he was clearly an inventor. In later articles that feature Wood's name, I learned that he was working on a monorail system for the city of St. Louis, so he wasn't just an inventor of magic props. Montraville Wood died at the age of 62 on January 6, 1923, and is buried in the Mount Auburn Memorial Park in Stickney, Illinois. So what do we make of this? Well, clearly Wood was an inventor. He had the credentials for sure. If his statement is true, I have no reason to doubt he was telling the truth. Then Josef Freud did in fact make a copy with permission of Wood's spirit hand and also sold it to Keller. But we also know that Josef Freud was an inventor, and I suspect that he made improvements to Wood's hand, which was unique to him, as in unique to Freud. But when we step over to the skull, it's hard to make a claim that this was Wood's creation. The Joseffy skull, named Balsamo, was an extremely complex piece of machinery. Some liken it to an early computer because though it did not work on electricity, it was programmable. And if Joseffy had stopped there and not invented anything else, I would say Wood's claim maybe had some validity. But Joseffy continued to create and invent. In truth, he had a 24-year performing career and a 40-year career in inventing. His non-magic inventing business dealt mainly with electromechanical devices, many of which were made for the U.S. government and likely the U.S. War Department. In regards to the Joseffy wrapping hand, I learned from a November 2011 issue of Genie magazine that John Gahn, the current owner of the hand, revealed the unique gimmick was interchangeable, thus allowing for different routines. And I'm guessing Montrevel Wood's hand did not have that feature. One other thing, I tried to find further information on the Wood versus Joseffy controversy, but it is not mentioned again in the Conjurer's Monthly magazine. The next time it's mentioned at all was in the pages of the Mum in Wood's obituary. But I don't think the two hands are frankly related, other than the fact that Freud made a copy of one. Perhaps if the Wood hand and the Joseffy hand could be compared side by side, we would know more. I saw a hand like this in the Klosterman collection about 15 years ago, but I didn't ask who it belonged to or who had created it, so I don't know if that's the other hand. Further, the Keller Wood hand went to Houdini after Keller's death, and I do not know where that one is today. Let's get back to Joseffy. I'd like to explore some of the lesser-known pieces, but just as mystifying. First was the Joseffy Rising cards. His version did not use the standard gimmick. Here's a description from the pages of the book The Marvelous Creations of Joseffy by David P. Abbott. Quote, Joseffy uses a tiny card case made in imitation of a lyre, with glass front and back. This is held in the hand of a little cupid made of metal. The case has flat sides so as to hold a pack of cards and is very artistic in appearance. This is handed to a spectator. The latter brings his own deck of cards, which he may freely shuffle. He places the pack in the card case himself. Joseffy now takes the latter in one hand and holds it aloft so all can see. There is positively no exchange of decks. He sets the case on a small table in full view. Joseffy leaves the side of his card case and can now be in any part of the room, hall, or auditorium. Now, any spectator who desires may choose any card freely. Joseffy then calls upon it to rise, whereupon it does so. It will remain up as long as desired, and at the spectator's desire, return back to the pack. It will keep rising and returning as long as the spectator wishes, or it will arise at any time during the performance. The spectator or any other may now choose another card and repeat this same performance, unquote. That sounds pretty diabolical to me. Next up is Joseffy's enigmatic cube. This was his version of the Decolta expanding cube trick. In Joseffy's version, the cube begins as a small 1-inch die or dice. It visibly grows to 2 inches, then to 4, then to 8 inches. He openly sets this on a low table and visibly continues to expand to a size of 3 feet 6 inches in size. Then he lifts the cube, and underneath is found his wife. Similar to Decolta's, but now, no doubt, very different in operation. Joseffy's act was 2 hours long. It included sleight of hand, manipulation magic, his unique brand of apparatus magic, and also the second part of the show included numerous violin solos, as Joseffy was quite a skilled musician as well as a magician. There's a really funny story in the pages of the book Silent Mora by William Rauscher. I've seen this story in other articles as well. Silent Mora, whose real name was Louis McCord, was in Chicago and was visiting Joseffy. The subject of the Abbott book came up. This is the book The Marvelous Creations of Joseffy by David P. Abbott. It was a popular book of the time, but many magicians were skeptical of the material that they were reading about. Joseffy asked Mora his opinion on the book, and Mora replied, "It was impossible to believe." So Joseffy pointed to a small cloth-draped table. He said, "All right, Mora, do you see that table with the cover on it with the 3 handkerchiefs?" And Mora said, yes, he saw it. Then Joseffy follows with, "I'm going to transform that table into the largest umbrella you have ever seen. The only request I make of you is that after you have viewed it for a while, you will turn your back and I will count to 10, and when I have finished counting, you can turn around." And with that, Joseffy lifted the table slightly, and it began to expand in every direction until it was so large it filled the entire room. Mora was dumbfounded. He looked above it, below it, and nothing made sense as to how this table grew into this gigantic umbrella. And true to his word, Mora turned his back, and after the count of 10, he turned back around to discover the little table was there as it had been in the beginning, and no sign of the giant umbrella. Incidentally, this marvelous mystery was called Japanette, and it is not one of the effects listed in the book, The Marvelous Creations of Joseffy, but it was one of his unusual pieces that he included in his act. I think he may have called it the Japanese fantasy in the show programs, but he also referred to it as the Japanette. He also took out a patent for this particular thing, or at least something very close to it, in 1913. Now, let's go to his ultimate creation, the one that you're probably most familiar with, the skull of Balsamo. As I mentioned earlier, this thing was essentially a computer, a modern computer. There were no electronics, no electricity even, yet very, very complex just the same. It looks like a genuine old human skull. In fact, the teeth on this thing are real human teeth. The skull will turn its head from side to side as if looking over the audience, and the teeth, at least the lower jaw, will smack shut, making a very loud clicking sound. In presentation, Joseffy would speak to this skull as if it were alive, and it responded accordingly. It was a sensation everywhere he took it. For a theater presentation, Joseffy would place the skull on a sheet of glass. The 4 corners of the glass had rope or ribbon through them so that they could be held by 4 spectators. This was done to show that there was nothing connected to the skull whatsoever, and yet the skull came to life as if it were real when Joseffy spoke to it. The skull of Balsamo would answer questions, reveal playing cards, do calculations, and more. Joseffy mainly presented Balsamo in theaters during his Lyceum circuit days. The skull was something you had to see to believe. There have been other talking skulls, but none compared to Balsamo. After Joseffy retired from performing, he would occasionally still bring Balsamo out when he would attend a function for magicians. It was clearly his masterpiece. Joseffy billed himself as a necromancer, and in his show he presented music, magic, and mystery. He apparently leaned heavily upon the humor that's known as puns, which, honestly, I'd kind of like to see. He had a strange appearance with a rather wide mustache, and he spoke with a European accent. Joseffy died on May 26, 1946, in San Antonio, Texas. He was cremated. One of his last wishes was for Balsamo to be destroyed upon his death. This, however, did not happen. A friend of Joseffy's purchased the skull, which remained in his family for a couple of generations. The skull finally ended up in the collection of John Gahn, who refurbished Balsamo. However, as Jim Steinmeier says in a September 1999 article on Joseffy that appeared in Magic magazine, John was the violin maker, but he was not in a position to be the violinist. This is where Max Maven entered the picture. Keep in mind, there was no script, no routine existed for Balsamo. Joseffy took this to the grave. So Max had to study the skull and develop a convincing routine. Interestingly, Max was very firm on not seeing how the skull operated. He did not want to see the inner workings of Balsamo. This was to be his performing partner, at least for one performance. Rehearsals with the actual skull proved problematic, so everyone was on edge the actual night of the show, and by all accounts, the performance went off flawlessly, and Balsamo came alive with Max just as he had with Joseffy many years before. That performance, by the way, took place at the 1998 LA Conference on Magic History. I was not fortunate enough to see that performance, but if you did, you witnessed something very special. It's a near miracle that Balsamo still exists today. Had Joseffy had his way, he would have had it destroyed. Though, it sat quietly inside a little box, which also served as a carrying case. And with the gentle care of his new owner and the skill of a master showman, Balsamo, and truly the spirit of Joseffy, took one more bow. This latter bit of history came from the September 1999 issue of Magic, written by Jim Steinmeier. I tried not to lean too heavily on this article, but I felt this latter section about the skull today was very important to share. And recently, Jim also wrote an article on the skull in Genie magazine in a spring issue. I encourage you to check that out. By the way, I also mentioned in the course of this podcast several names that would have been Paul Valadon, Harry Keller, and Germain. If you want to check them out, I've covered them. Valadon I covered on episode 108, Keller on episodes 8, 9, and 10, Germain on episode 25. As for Felix Herman and Frederick Eugene Powell, they are going to be covered in the future. So that is our episode on the marvelous life of Joseffy. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please like the episode in whatever way your podcast provider will allow. And until next time, I'm Dean Carnegie. I am the Magic Detective. Please be well and stay safe.